In October 1944, George Blind, a brave member of the French resistance, faced a German firing squad with a defiant smile. His courage in the face of death turned him into a symbol of resilience and resistance against Nazi oppression. Imagine standing in his shoes, knowing the end was near. Could you muster the same bravery and strength? Blind's unwavering spirit became an inspiration for the fight for freedom. But Blind's defiance was just one example of the resistance's unbreakable will. Captain Nieves Fernandez, one of the few female guerrilla leaders in the Philippines, demonstrates her knife skills to a U.S. soldier. Known for her silent and lethal tactics, Fernandez played a crucial role in the resistance against Japanese occupation. Her leadership and bravery made her a respected figure in a male-dominated fight, defying expectations and helping to inspire those around her. But despite her efforts, the struggle for liberation in the Philippines was far from over, with more battles yet to be fought. This is a photo of London telephone operators trying on gas masks at the Civil Anti-Gas Training Center in 1937. As Europe edged closer to war, Britain prepared for the possibility of chemical attacks. Gas masks became a crucial part of civilian defense preparations. These women were trained to continue their vital communications work, even in the face of deadly air raids. But if you thought this was the extent of wartime horror, you are wrong. This is a chilling photo of Red Army officers observing the suicide of a Nazi family in Demmin, Germany in April 1945. As Soviet forces advanced into German territory, many civilians, gripped by fear and despair, chose to take their own lives rather than face capture. This tragic event reflects the extreme consequences of the war's end in Europe, but this is nothing compared to what comes next. This striking photo captures U.S. planes bombing the Focke-Wulf factory in 1943, a key facility producing fighter planes for Nazi Germany. The factory's destruction significantly weakened the Luftwaffe, marking a crucial moment in the Allied bombing campaign. Imagine being one of those pilots, knowing your mission could cripple Germany's air power. What thoughts must have raced through their minds? But this bombing was just one part of the larger effort to dismantle Germany's war machine, and more missions lay ahead. During the Battle of the Bulge, German soldiers used deceptive tactics, including wearing U.S. uniforms to mislead Allied troops. This image captures a German saboteur moments before his execution, a stark reminder of the high risks involved in such tactics. Although effective in causing confusion, these strategies often ended with swift and harsh punishment. As the Allies closed in, the Germans became increasingly desperate, resorting to brutal measures. But the Battle of the Bulge would continue to witness even more fierce and desperate fighting. This photo captures the cooperation between China and the U.S. during World War II, with a Chinese soldier guarding American P-40 fighter planes. These planes, famously flown by the Flying Tigers, played a crucial role in defending China from Japanese forces. How important do you think such international cooperation was to securing victory in the war? But despite the success of this alliance, even greater challenges would arise in the years to come as the war intensified. This chilling image captures a Soviet prisoner of war glaring at Heinrich Himmler, one of the key architects of the Holocaust and Nazi terror. The tension is palpable, as Himmler, who oversaw the concentration camps and the extermination of millions, stands face to face with one of the victims of his regime. The defiant stare of the POW speaks volumes about the hatred and suffering inflicted by Himmler's policies. But this is nothing compared to the next photo. The children imprisoned at Auschwitz endured unimaginable suffering under the Nazi regime. This haunting photo captures their gazes, reflecting the immense cruelty they faced. Stripped of their childhoods, these young victims were subjected to brutal conditions in one of the most notorious concentration camps. How does it make you feel, knowing their futures were stolen in such a horrific way? But the full scale of the atrocities committed in Auschwitz and other camps was only revealed after liberation. This rare photo of Adolf Hitler wearing traditional Bavarian lederhosen, taken in the 1930s, reveals a more informal side of the dictator. Hitler, known for carefully controlling his public image, later banned the photo, considering it undignified for a leader of his stature. The image resurfaced after being found by Allied soldiers in 1945, offering a glimpse into the efforts to craft his authoritarian persona. But that wasn't all. In 1942, following the attack on Pearl Harbor, anti-Japanese sentiment swept through the United States, leading to the unjust internment of Japanese Americans. This photo shows a Chinese worker using an improvised sign to distinguish himself from Japanese Americans, hoping to avoid being mistakenly targeted. Fear and prejudice blurred identities during this tense time, and many Asian Americans were forced to take desperate measures for self-protection. But even such signs couldn't fully shield people from the rising tide of suspicion and hostility in wartime America. This haunting photo shows Red Army officers observing the suicide of a Nazi family in Demmin, Germany. As Soviet forces advanced, many Nazi families, gripped by fear and hopelessness, chose to take their own lives rather than surrender. The psychological toll of these mass suicides was immense. How do you think soldiers processed such scenes of mass despair after years of brutal conflict and destruction? But neither soldiers nor civilians were fully prepared for the horrors that followed the fall of the Nazi regime. This photo marks Germany's formal declaration of war on the United States. Made by Adolf Hitler on December 11, 1941, just days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. By aligning with Japan, Hitler expanded the conflict into a fully global war, drawing the U.S. into direct confrontation with the Axis powers. This pivotal moment united the major Allied forces, shifting the tide of war. But if you thought this was the end, you are wrong. Many more battles lay ahead. This photo shows children scavenging abandoned German military equipment in the USSR in 1943. As battles raged between Soviet and German forces, villages were left littered with remnants of war: uniforms, weapons, and gear. These children collected whatever they could, driven by the need to survive in the harsh conditions of the Eastern Front. It was a common yet tragic reality for many during the war. But this is where the story gets interesting. What they found often held more than just material value. This photo shows U.S. Marines from the 5th Division scaling the steep slopes of Red Beach during the intense Battle of Iwo Jima in February 1945. Under the looming shadow of Mount Suribachi, this critical advance was part of the U.S. effort to secure a base for launching air attacks on Japan. The battle became one of the Pacific's bloodiest, with every inch of land hard fought. But that wasn't all. The island had more perilous challenges waiting. This photo captures Canadian infantry soldiers cautiously climbing stairs in the war-torn ruins of Campociro, Italy in 1943, all while avoiding deadly sniper fire. The steep, rugged terrain provided enemy forces with a significant tactical advantage, turning every moment into a life-or-death decision. The Italian campaign was one of the most brutal fronts of World War II, with Allied forces encountering relentless enemy resistance at every turn. But neither side could have been prepared for the next intense confrontation that awaited them. This image shows British women hard at work assembling Sten submachine guns in a factory during World War II. With men away fighting on their front lines, women stepped up, taking on critical roles to maintain the war effort. Their tireless work ensured a continuous supply of weapons like the Sten, known for its simplicity and low production cost. These contributions were absolutely indispensable in keeping the Allied war machine running smoothly. But this story is nothing compared to the remarkable events that would follow. This powerful photo captures a German soldier surrendering to a U.S. paratrooper during Operation Overlord in June 1944, part of the D-Day landings in Normandy. The surrender marked the beginning of the Allied push to liberate occupied Europe. The paratroopers played a critical role in securing key positions behind enemy lines, paving the way for the main forces. How do you think it felt to surrender, knowing the war was turning against Germany? On April 28, 1945, Soviet troops entered the Frankfurter Alley 113 subway station in Berlin, marking one of the final chapters of World War II. The battle for Berlin was brutal, with Soviet forces fighting their way through fierce German resistance to reach the heart of the Third Reich. Capturing key urban infrastructure like subway stations was essential for their advance. What do you think ran through the minds of soldiers as they closed in on victory in the crumbling capital? But the war's cost was staggering. This iconic photo captures U.S. Marines raising the American flag atop Mount Suribachi during the Battle of Iwo Jima on February 23, 1945. The flag raising symbolized hope and triumph, boosting morale both on the battlefield and back home. Though it marked a key moment in the Pacific campaign, the battle for Iwo Jima was far from over, with weeks of fierce fighting still ahead. But the sight of the flag waving above the battlefield became a powerful image of American perseverance. This photo captures U.S. forces preparing for a critical amphibious landing in Empress Augusta Bay, Bougainville, during World War II. Securing Bougainville was essential to sever Japanese supply lines and gain a strategic foothold in the Pacific. The soldiers, fully aware of the dangers, readied themselves to enter enemy territory, knowing the battle ahead would be fierce. The island's jungles and fortified positions made this mission particularly perilous. but the fiercest and bloodiest battles of the Pacific Campaign were still on the horizon. On December 15, 1944, U.S. Navy crews played a vital role in covering the American landings at Mindoro Island as part of the effort to retake the Philippines. The invasion was fraught with danger, as enemy aircraft constantly threatened the advancing Allied forces. This photo captures the tension as Navy sailors scanned the skies, anticipating incoming Japanese planes. Their vigilance was crucial to the success of the operation. But this is nothing compared to the next story. This photo captures British sailors aboard HMS Iron Duke in 1939, preparing their guns for combat as tensions in Europe escalated into World War II. The ship, a veteran of World War I, was repurposed for naval defense, particularly in anti-aircraft roles. The sailors worked tirelessly, fully aware that unseen threats lurked in the waters and skies around them. Their vigilance would prove crucial in the battles to come. This photo shows U.S. Marines battling through the dense jungles of Cape Gloucester in 1944, where Japanese forces launched relentless counterattacks. The unforgiving terrain turned the battlefield into a living nightmare, with every step posing a new danger, from hidden enemy positions to treacherous conditions. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the Marines continued to push forward, determined to secure their objectives. But as they ventured deeper into the jungle, the question remained: how much worse could the fighting get in this deadly environment? During the brutal Battle of Iwo Jima, U.S. troops depended on a steady flow of supplies, including ammunition and food, to endure the relentless fighting. This photo captures soldiers receiving these vital resources, which were crucial for their survival in the harsh and unforgiving conditions of the island. Iwo Jima became one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific, claiming countless lives before it was over. But while the Marines fought here, General Dwight D. Eisenhower was preparing for another critical mission in Europe. This iconic photo captures General Dwight D. Eisenhower delivering the order of the day to his troops on the eve of D-Day in June 1944. As Supreme Commander of the Allied forces, Eisenhower's words inspired courage and determination ahead of the largest amphibious invasion in history. The soldiers faced overwhelming odds as they prepared to storm the beaches of Normandy. Despite his confidence, even Eisenhower couldn't predict the true cost of the invasion. Would the bravery of his troops be enough to turn the tide of the war? This is a photo of Luftwaffe planes flying in formation over an unspecified city around 1939. As one of the most formidable air forces during the early years of World War II, the Luftwaffe played a key role in Germany's blitzkrieg tactics. These flyovers were used to demonstrate power and intimidate enemies. The perfect formation in this image symbolizes the strength of the German Air Force at its peak. But this is nothing compared to what comes next. This is a heartbreaking photo of a dead Italian soldier clutching a photograph of his son, taken during the Battle of El Alamein in Egypt, 1942. The image powerfully captures the personal toll of war, where every soldier left behind a family and dreams. El Alamein was a pivotal battle in the North African campaign, where Allied forces halted the Axis advance. But this is where the story gets even more tragic. This is a grim photo of prisoners lining up for roll call at Buchenwald concentration camp around 1943. Buchenwald was one of the largest camps on German soil, where thousands of political prisoners, Jews, and other persecuted groups suffered under inhumane conditions. This image captures a moment of control and brutality, a harsh reality for those trapped in the Nazi concentration camps. This is a photo of American sailors rescuing survivors of the USS West Virginia during the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941. The surprise attack by Japanese forces was a pivotal moment, drawing the United States into World War II. Amid the flames and wreckage, acts of heroism like this showed the resilience of American forces in the face of devastation. But unfortunately, neither side could have foreseen the devastation that would follow. This photo captures the formidable 21-centimeter K-12 German railway gun firing across the English Channel from France in 1942. Designed for long-range attacks, this massive artillery piece could hit targets at extreme distances, instilling fear in British citizens and military alike. These guns were part of Germany's effort to strike at Britain's defenses from afar. But despite the power of these weapons, they couldn't stop the inevitable Allied advance that would turn the tide of the war. This photo, taken after Germany's surrender in 1945, shows thousands of captured Karabiner 98K rifles stacked in Norway. These rifles, the standard weapon for German infantry, symbolize the end of Nazi occupation and the restoration of Norwegian freedom. After 5 long years under German control, the sight of surrendered weapons marked a turning point in Norway's liberation. But with the physical occupation over, the question remained, how long would it take for the emotional scars of war to heal in Norway? This photo captures U.S. Navy TBM Avengers and SB-2C Helldivers conducting airstrikes on Hakodate, Japan, in the final stages of World War II. These planes were instrumental in crippling Japan's military infrastructure, delivering powerful blows to key targets as the Allies closed in on victory. The relentless bombing campaigns caused significant damage, hastening Japan's defeat. But the Pacific War would not end with these airstrikes. It would culminate in a far more devastating event, the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This dramatic photo captures a B-25 bomber flying over the erupting Mount Vesuvius in March 1944 during the Italian campaign. The eruption added an unexpected danger to military operations in the region, with volcanic ash clouding the skies and covering the landscape below. Despite the natural disaster, Allied forces pressed on, determined to maintain their momentum in the fight against Axis forces. But as nature wreaked havoc from above, the next story reveals the unyielding courage in the face of human tragedy. This chilling photo captures the final moments of a Russian spy, laughing in the face of death as he awaits execution in Finland in 1942. The spy's defiance in his final moments remains a powerful symbol of courage and fearlessness, even when facing certain death. In the midst of brutal wartime espionage, this image highlights the personal sacrifices made by countless individuals. But while this spy met his end with a smile, the next scene shows a much more somber reflection of loss at sea. Following a deadly kamikaze attack in 1944, this photo captures the solemn moment of a mass burial at sea. Kamikaze pilots used their aircraft as weapons, inflicting devastating damage on Allied ships. Far from land, sailors held these burials as a final farewell to their fallen comrades, casting their bodies into the ocean. It was a stark reminder of the harsh realities of naval warfare in the Pacific. But while the ocean claimed many lives, the next story shifts to the skies over London, where a different kind of destruction rained down. This somber photo shows victims of a Nazi air raid being buried in London during the relentless Blitz of World War II. Night after night, German bombers targeted civilian areas, leaving devastation and loss in their wake. The Blitz was intended to break the morale of the British people, but even in the face of such destruction, their spirit remained unbroken. But as the dust settled in London, the next image takes us to a German soldier returning to a shattered home. In this heartbreaking photo from 1946, a German soldier returns to his ruined home in Frankfurt after the war, only to find it destroyed and his family gone. The devastation wrought by Allied bombings left many German cities in ruins, and the emotional toll on returning soldiers was profound. This image captures the raw pain of a man confronting the personal costs of war. But while he faced the ruins of his past, the next image shows a soldier still battling on the front lines of New Guinea. This intense photo shows a motor torpedo boat gunner in New Guinea during World War II, gripping a .50 caliber machine gun. These small, fast boats were vital for quick attacks in coastal operations, requiring gunners to stay alert and ready to engage enemy aircraft or vessels at any moment. The tension in this image reflects the high-stakes nature of naval warfare in the Pacific. But while these soldiers fought on the water, the next photo takes us to the battlegrounds of Kursk, where one of the largest tank battles in history unfolded. This grim photo from the Battle of Kursk in July 1943 shows a German soldier sitting beside a destroyed artillery gun and the body of a fallen comrade. The Battle of Kursk was one of the largest and deadliest tank battles in history, with the Soviet forces successfully repelling the German offensive. This image captures the devastation and immense loss that characterized the Eastern Front. But as the smoke cleared from Kursk, the next image reveals another moment of tragedy and survival in the war. This haunting photo shows prisoners lined up in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp in Germany, one of the many places where the Nazi regime subjected political prisoners, Jews, and other persecuted groups to horrific treatment. The conditions in these camps were inhumane, with starvation, forced labor, and brutal punishments being routine. This image captures the cruelty that defined the Holocaust and the systemic oppression of millions. But if you thought this was the end, you are wrong. The nightmare continued for far too many. Captured during the fierce fighting during the Normandy landings, this photo shows doctors attending to a wounded soldier in France in 1944. These medics worked under constant threat, providing life-saving care on the battlefield amid gunfire and chaos. Their bravery and dedication ensured many soldiers had a chance to survive the horrors of war. The crucial role of battlefield medics often went unrecognized, but was indispensable to the war effort. But if you thought this was the end of their challenges, you are wrong. The battle raged on. This photo captures the damage inflicted by a Japanese kamikaze attack on the HMS Sussex in 1945. Kamikaze pilots deliberately sacrificed their lives to crash into Allied ships, causing significant destruction during the Pacific Campaign. The mark left on the ship serves as a chilling reminder of the intensity and desperation of these suicide missions. Both the physical and emotional tolls were profound for those involved in these battles. But this is where the story gets even more intense. Another deadly threat loomed on the horizon. This historic photo captures Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signing Germany's unconditional surrender in Berlin in May 1945, marking the official end of World War II in Europe. This moment symbolized the collapse of the Third Reich and the beginning of the new chapter for a war-torn continent. The signing ended years of brutal conflict, but the scars of the war would remain for decades. But while the war ended in Europe, moments of humanity and relief still emerged. What could possibly bring warmth amid such devastation? In this heartwarming photo, an Allied soldier shakes a dog's paw during the brutal Battle of the Bulge. Amid the harsh conditions and relentless fighting, moments like this brought some emotional relief to soldiers facing unimaginable stress. Even in the bleakest moments of war, such connections reminded soldiers of life beyond the battlefield. The scene is a touching reminder of resilience and humanity. But as the battle raged on, darker moments were unfolding. What fate awaited those trapped in Nazi concentration camps? This haunting photo captures the final moments of a Jewish woman about to be hanged in a Nazi concentration camp. The Nazi regime used such public executions to terrorize prisoners and enforce brutal control. The image is a stark reminder of the cruelty and horrors of the Holocaust, where millions of lives were mercilessly taken. The courage of those who faced such fate is immeasurable. But while this woman faced unimaginable terror, what was the fate of the children imprisoned in Auschwitz? This heartbreaking photo shows children imprisoned at Auschwitz, one of the most notorious Nazi extermination camps. These young prisoners, stripped of their childhoods, faced inhumane conditions, forced labor, and a constant threat of death. Auschwitz became a symbol of the horrors of the Holocaust, where millions of Jews, including children, were murdered. The image captures the unimaginable suffering they endured. But in the face of such cruelty, what kind of resilience and hope could these children hold on to? This rare photo shows a mouse tank and a Sturm Tiger loaded onto a transport during World War II. The Mouse, the heaviest tank ever built, and the Sturm Tiger, designed to obliterate fortifications, represent the height of Nazi military engineering. Despite their immense power, the Mouse saw little action, while the Sturm Tiger had limited deployment. Their size and destructive potential reflected Germany's ambition to dominate the battlefield. But even with these technological marvels, the next story reveals how humor became a powerful weapon in the war. In this lighthearted photo from 1939, British Royal Signal soldiers mock Adolf Hitler by exaggerating his infamous gestures. At the start of World War II, humor was a crucial morale booster, helping soldiers cope with the mounting tension and fear of the conflict. This playful satire of the Nazi leader shows how soldiers found moments of levity amidst the growing chaos. But while humor provided relief in the early days, the next story showcases the deadly precision of those who operated in silence. This photo captures a British sniper perfectly camouflaged and ready to strike during World War II. Snipers played a critical role in many battles, patiently waiting for the right moment to take down high-value targets. Their ability to remain hidden and use precision was vital to disrupting enemy operations. This soldier represents the deadly efficiency of World War II snipers, who operated in silence but changed the course of battles with a single shot. But while snipers worked alone, the next photo reveals the devastating power of German tank formations. This photo shows German Panzer IV tanks advancing during Operation Barbarossa, the 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union. The Panzer IV, a mainstay of the German army, played a key role in the initial successes of the campaign. The early stages of the offensive saw rapid advances, but the harsh Soviet winter and fierce resistance soon turned the tide against the Nazis. Operation Barbarossa became one of the most brutal and decisive campaigns of the war. But even in the face of these powerful machines, the Soviet resolve would prove unbreakable. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. These powerful images remind us of the courage and sacrifice during World War II. Stay tuned for more stories that shaped our world.